So we just went live. We're live here. I'm here with Christopher Hewitt and First Art retired air defender. Look at that guide on behind him. That's Freedom by Freedom, and we're just gonna hang out tonight. And there's actually people that like typed even before this started that this was gonna be like crunk or something. I don't even know what words they said. I have to go back and look at it. That was so cool. Oh,
Well, like I said, you either get me up and used to in front of a formation or with a live mic, and it can either go good or it can go off the rails. And I noticed earlier, it's the hardware I had. I'm doing this specifically because my friend Michael Cornish asked me to have this specific title on me while doing this.
okay, so you're Cornish, one of Cornish's buddy, huh?
Oh yeah, he and I have known each other somewhat since AIT, but we first met at Fort Hood, and the thing that first drew us to each other was when we found out we had mutual love of wrestling, and then the second was us over the past almost 28, 29 years of busting each other's balls.
Right. Okay. So look. There's nobody more loved than Michael Cornish. That's for sure. And there's like he was willing to stand out there and do some of the craziest things you ever seen in your life, right? And just be real. He was real, and he was good at being real. And I'm guessing you're very similar, right?
Well, he was like a more polished version of me because it's like a friend of yours and I, old Paris Williams, would say, and I actually have it above me that says, if you want to be taken seriously, sometimes you have to shoot a hostage. And like I said, Mike, he's a more polished version of me. If I was to equate it in something that he and I understand, he's like The Rock to my Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. It's so neat that you have it's so neat that like you have Paris Williams saying up there, right? He's famous for saying that, right? He's like sometimes you gotta shoot a hostage. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Oh wow, we got record crowds tonight. Cook. Oh my gosh. Sergeant Major Dana, I love you. You got to be on soon. You guys were hanging out. Harris, thank you for being here. Hey, for Sergeant, let me, if you don't mind, let me talk to you a minute and share a couple things with you and everybody that happens to be watching, so that they kind of I get a chance to talk about where this started and what's going on. Do you guys mind? Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can, right? So look, if you want to support, go to formerforce.com. There's the donate button right there. Look at our master rated donors: Williams, Jackman, Calderon, Hackey, Fernandez, Lane, Evans, Cobos, Wino, Ridgeway, Barrow. Notice those names haven't changed in a while. And, if you guys are supporting the show, we really would appreciate our master rated donors. There's our senior rated donors: Newton, Diaz, Shrum, Kirkendall, Allen, Ross, Archer. Archer, dude, you've come on strong. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of our senior rated donors. You can see our basic donors. Thank you, Kester, for your donation recently. Kadelka, it's so great to see your donation. Thank you very much. For McManus, McManus recently won the Fan of the Week, and we appreciate all of our donors, and very much so. If you want to sign up, right down here, formerforce.com, sign up. Right there, you can sign up. And that comes directly to us, and then we'll be in contact and get you scheduled. If you want to nominate a hero, it's very easy. The first thing to do is you have to do it yourself, right? You can't nominate someone without coming on the show yourself and being representing yourself as a hero. So that's one of the things that that I want to make sure everybody knows about, that you can go on there and sign up, and you can nominate people. But please come on first, because everybody's a hero, and tell your story. Just like First Sergeant Retired Christopher Hewitt is tonight, that's with me. And man, I'm really excited to talk to you. So you got some know something done, right? What happened?
So, well, first, before we begin, I'm going to do a plug as well. And it's for two friends of mine. And one of them you're familiar with, but old Uncle Ruckus himself, Curtis Apollos Harris, he actually put out a pretty damn good book called AR 670 Harris, My Life in the United States Army. And it's really good. And also, my other friend, Orlando Bennett, he also put out a book last year. I'll have it with me right now. I don't remember where I had it, but it's also called Welcome Home. And both of them very, very good to read.
Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. I just got a book out there, by the way, you can go and get. It's called Entangled at 4,000. So all of us are getting in that business, and I also have Curtis Harris's book, and I'm very proud owner, and I've read it, and it's a very great story. It's one of the things that's so wild about everything that I'm doing is that everybody's story is so deep, right? It's so layered, and sometimes the path is tough, and sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you got buddies that are carrying you. Sometimes you're carrying some buddies with you. But we always find ourselves here, and here is a good place to be. And I'm here right now with you. What is it like to be you?
Well, to go back to your original question, as far as the nose and everything, so back in 2017, I started losing like my sense of smell, and I started having like a real hard time breathing. So what they did is they went up in there and they trimmed a bunch of stuff. Well, since then, I had this bone growth or cartilage or scar tissue that grew on my nose right here. And so what they did last Friday was they went up in there and they trimmed it down. I believe for some reason, they re-broke my nose, even though I don't remember my nose ever being broken. And then what they took out in my ear here, they took out some cartilage and put it in my nose, but it looks like I got my ass whipped.
well, you're kind of fuzzy on my camera anyway, so it's all fine. You look great. You look great. So I saw you. Did you see the thumbnail that I made of you, where somebody was like the most interesting first sergeant alive? That was really cool, right?
So yeah, one of my soldiers actually, I want to say she made it, and her name was Sarah Billings. Really good troop, but I believe she made it, or he or she found it somewhere. I don't remember. But as far as like the question, what's it like to be me? I don't know. I mean, on one hand, there's a certain parts of the population that think I'm a real asshole, and then the other hand, there's people that actually like me. So I couldn't even tell you there. I just try to not wake up dead every day.
So Spencer Knight said, "You're a Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying son of a gun. Has a
That's
hard
right.
time holding those alligators down." Where's that coming from?
Well, that's coming from a promo that Ric Flair cut one time on Nature Boy Buddy Landell, when he said it was so hard to sit in the studio listening to a guy call his name when he spent more money in spilt liquor in bars across this country than he made in 1 year. Well, I'm a big wrestling fan too. As a matter of fact, that title belt I had, actually, Ric Flair signed it.
Oh, that's awesome, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So did you ever wrestle?
Only in the barracks. I was in the mid to late '90s when I first got to Fort Hood. I was well renowned up in the barracks, or So we had this sergeant major named Radford, and he always used to call the barracks the bordellos because one day, end of day motor pool formation of the week on a Friday, and this was back in, I guess, the non-PG era, whatever you want to call it. And old Michael D. Radford come walking up there, battalion sergeant major, in front of the entire battalion, and he said, "I'm really getting tired of some of you Joes having your bitches up in my barracks, treating it like it's a bordellos and not staying true to the visitation hours." So from that day forward, the barracks were forever known as the bordellos. And yeah, we used to wrestle and everything up there, and I used to get pretty wild.
Well, well, okay. So you got to tell me a too wild story, or at least part of a too wild story. Something. What happened?
Well, I'll even tell you something. This didn't even have to do with me, but I was, I guess, vicariously a part of it. So there I was, and this is where everybody in the audience goes, "No shit, there I was." So where I'm originally from is a city called Rowlett, Texas, and it's about 2.5 hours north of Fort Hood. So July 4th weekend, 95, I went home to hang out with my family and see everybody. And then when I came back that Monday, um, my team chief, Sergeant Wolf, Christopher Wolf, was in the room with the MPs, and I was like, "What's going on?" Well, the guy that I was a roommate with was named Keith Owens, which ironically, he was from where I was from and graduated from the same high school a year before me. So evidently over the weekend, Owens and this other soldier named Vinay, they got pretty drunk and pretty hammered, and they started arguing with each other. And, I'm going to try and watch my mouth a little bit here, but they started arguing with each other about who could be more promiscuous with women. Well, evidently, Owens didn't like Vinay's answer, so he decided to take it upon himself to show him the fast way down from the third floor balcony by throwing him over the balcony. And then when he landed, he went downstairs, kicked him, and then waited for the MPs.
Oh no.
Yeah, so this dude was paralyzed for a few years, but the last I heard from him years and years ago was he was able to walk again.
Oh wow.
But I mean, this guy that I was living with was the same guy who not even a few months prior we were out in the field, and him and this other cat named Holmes decided to sneak a bottle of gin out to the field. And then during the night while everybody was asleep, took a Humvee back to the rear, got dressed, and went to the club and got pulled over for DWI.
Oh no.
Yeah, there's a fine line between motivation and stupidity.
Well, but you've told me two stories about somebody else. You haven't told me a story about you yet. Tell me about Private Hewitt.
Private Hewitt was an idiot, and it took me until a few years to finally, I guess, find my groove or whatever. But I was also the one that would be up in the barracks, and I would try to take the fast way down from the third floor, but that would be just climbing, not just throwing my ass across from it. Going down to Austin and getting into a little bit of trouble, although I would say roughly about 1998 to 1999, whenever I would go down to Austin, I was at that time I thought I was the pinnacle of the gay community, because the only people that would ever hit on me or proposition me would be men, which, I mean, hey, to each their own, but that definitely was not what I was looking for. But if I could say something about Private Hewitt, I think if I would have applied myself back then, like I did later as I progressed through the ranks, I mean, I never got in trouble, never got Article 15 or anything, but I was the typical private that would either do something stupid or say something stupid, but it wasn't bad enough to where I'd actually get in trouble. I mean, I'd do some push ups or whatever, and that's about it. But if you asked my very first team chief at the time, the biggest thing he could say with me was I could not stay awake while driving because we'd be bumping around in a Stinger truck on Fort Hood, and he'd just have either his hand or the butt of his M16 just slapping me on the helmet, keeping me awake. But this is after we've been awake for 4 days, bumping around Fort Hood. So I'm like, what do you expect me to do?
It's wild when you think about those times, right, in our lives. It's really like paid live action role play. It's like, okay, go on this Fort Hood thing and go find this grid coordinate and go sit on the top of a hill and pretend you're going to shoot something down if it comes. And we're going to call you on the radio and you track things, right? And we got our maps and we got the Humvee and we're driving around. Did you find that to be a fun thing to do, or did you hate every minute of it?
Once I understood, I found it fun. And, so, once again, that particular field problem, we had this commander, and his thing was we could only move at night. So you're telling me that we got to stay awake all day, acting like we're going to shoot something. And then now we got to spend all night, of course, in the middle of the dark, MVG's blackout drive, finding some other position way on the other side of post. And at some point, you don't think somebody's going to fall asleep. I mean, it is what it is. But once I actually understood, because that's why I used to tell soldiers too, there comes a point in your career where things sort of kind of click and you kind of see the method behind the madness and why you do certain stuff now. That way you don't have to do certain stuff then. And you start taking the blinders off about, well, okay, this is what Private Hewitt's doing, as in, okay, this is what I'm doing. That's helping the team. That's helping the platoon. That's helping the battery, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a tough kind of break. Well, one really high level question I want to ask you, if you don't mind, if you'd share with me, is how do you know which bottle to spit in and which bottle to drink out of? How does that work?
Temperature.
Oh,
This one's colder than this one. Plus, one's on the left, one's on the right.
that's why Joe Stout made the three rules of the, or I think he called it the three rules of the bar. I think because people were drinking out of their spit cans or spit bottles. Oh my
No,
gosh!
I've made that mistake too many times in my life.
Oh, I
I
love
may be dumb, but I'm not stupid.
it. So, what were you like as a kid? Did you have sisters and brothers? Were you picked on? Were you running around rambunctious, or you were quiet and reserved?
Both. I was running around rambunctious with people that I knew, um, but I was quiet and reserved with people I didn't know. And, some of that is still the same to this day. I had two older sisters. Oh, I say had. My oldest sister, Jennifer, she passed away in 2017. And then my middle sister, Juliana, she's still alive and kicking. As a matter of fact, of her three children, her last one just graduated high school a few weeks ago. And I went and saw that. But, I was the typical, even though I try to block the 80s out because I call that my awkward phase. Um, did the typical things, outdoors, indoors. That was when Nintendo was really big. Um, and went back in high school, I was kind of the guy. I knew everybody, but nobody knew me. So I wasn't in like the popular uh, cliques and the popular crowds, which is amazing because years later, with the invention of social media, some of these people that would hardly ever give me the time of day back then, they're up in here like, hey, be your friend and everything. And I'm like, much like I saw on an episode of Duck Dynasty when Jace Robertson said, when it comes to high school reunions, if I haven't talked to you in 10 or 20 years, there's probably a good reason for it.
Right. I hear you. I hear you. It is an interesting thing about how relationships go and come. Like I'm awful at staying in touch, right? If my buddy thinks that because I haven't talked to him in 10 years doesn't mean I don't love him. It's just cuz I'm a guy sometimes and I'm bad at keeping in touch, I think. I hope. Are you good at keeping in touch and maintaining contact with people?
So I know Michael Cornish is watching this right now because he will call me and I will sit there and I will watch that phone ring until it goes to voicemail. But I do that just because he and I call each other and we cut wrestling promos on each other's voicemails. But I try to keep in touch, but it's one of those things, just like a relationship or anything else, of I'm only going to put in effort where it's reciprocated.
Right.
So, I mean, if somebody doesn't come up on the net and say anything to me, then I'm not going to say anything to them. Yeah. And I mean, nothing bad. It's just, there's two parts in the relationship. And I mean, I say that, and I've been married and divorced twice, and I'm not the best at saying what's good for relationships. As a matter of fact, I would always say I like marriage so much I did it twice.
Well, so when you were a kid, what'd you want to be when you grew up?
Honestly, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. Just because I grew up in the DFW area, and back then the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and Sportatorium and World Class, that was like really big in Texas. I mean, yeah, I played football. A lot of people are surprised I actually played the tuba in the damn band, but I wanted to be a wrestler. But then, as I was getting closer to getting out of high school, I actually wanted to do a trade school, and I actually got to go tour Texas State and Technical College in Waco for welding and auto body. But even then, what was it? Coming out of high school, I mean, I really never could say like what class, family, like people say they grew up upper class, middle class, whatever. I never really knew what class we were in, but I just knew that once I was getting ready to graduate high school, I really didn't want to go to school because I just spent, I mean, if you include kindergarten, 13 years in public education. And the summer between my senior year, the recruiter called me and he was like, "Hey, this is Staff Sergeant Ford with the United States Army. Can I arrest you in $30,000 for college?" And I said, "Well, hell yeah." But then later on, when I unfortunately had to be a recruiter, I learned pretty much, I fell right in hook, line, and sinker by the book of how you sell somebody on the Army.
Yeah, so it's neat to it's neat all of a sudden to be on the other side of those operations and you're like, oh crap, that's right, man, they got me good, right? But look, it's a good program, right? The military was good for me, right? Was it good for you?
Yeah, it was, because originally I was going to do 4 years and get out and figure out life and go to college or whatever. But then I realized, I'm somewhat decent at this. As long as you show up on time, do what you're supposed to do, and know your job, you're not going to have any issues. So then I just kept re-enlisting. I mean, I didn't start doing college until after I retired. It took me that long to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, or to somehow avoid being homeless or starving to death.
Yeah, many of us like I was a similar situation. I was a sergeant first class before I started. I'm sorry. I got my associate's degree when I was a sergeant, and then I finished up when I was a sergeant first class and got my bachelor's. Of course, I got mine from the Harvard of online universities, University of Phoenix online. Okay, so
yeah, I'm going through Liberty University right now, and even though it's all online, some of the stuff that I've had to do for this class, I'm pretty sure that, excuse me, that either my professor or some of the other students are like, man, this is the dumbest MFer in the room right here.
Well, so what kind of things are you good at versus what are you not good at?
Well, if you ask my ex wives, they would say I'm not good at communication or showing my emotions. Um, However, what I personally think I'm good at is like, getting better at communication, being understanding of other people. Um, as far as I always try to make a joke out of everything and I get that from my father. My father was one of the biggest, both my parents, but my father was one of the biggest influences in my life. And he's one of those you would rarely ever see him get upset, but if he did, then that's when you know the shit hit the fan.
Oh
Um,
wow.
Sometimes I can be loud like my mother was. Um, so like with my mother and father, she was the loud one, he was the silent one. They made it work. Um, I guess other things I'm good at as far as like things to actually do is I like to cook things, smoke meats. I'm a master of useless knowledge. Um, um, I know things about things that really don't matter, like I can name everybody that the Undertaker beat at WrestleMania, or who all Ric Flair defeated for all his 16 world titles. But if you would ask my ex-wives anything, I couldn't remember anniversaries or dates or what people were wearing on our first date.
Oh yeah, I'm bad at that too. There's I guess Compton, Jessica says ex-wife number one. What do you want to know about
Yep.
Christopher? There you
And
go.
the thing is I say ex-wives, but I mean, I'm actually more friends with her now than I hate to say it, but I mean, it's a reality. I'm more friends with her now than when we were married because we actually talk regularly and we're both still involved in like each other's family business. But um, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily look upon my times being married as failures. They're just, hey, shit doesn't work out and you got to move along. But um, that's just the way it goes.
Are you single now?
Yeah, I'm single right now, except for the dogs that live with me. Because with my second former wife, she used to be big into the animals and doing the pet rescue and everything. So I have the animals that are actually here. I have a Chihuahua weenie mix, and I have a cat, and her name is Cat with a K. And then I have a few dogs from my sons that they're going to be getting. And I'm real big into housing and rescuing like the senior dogs. As a matter of fact, a week ago today, I had to take one of my wiener dogs named Fonzie. And it was his time. And, it kind of sucks because I only have them for a few years because they're seniors and get attached. But it's a lot better than somebody just giving up on this animal and giving them away to some uh I don't know, giving them away to someone just because they got old. So I do have a soft spot for that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, uh, you were a stinger guy in Fort Hood, Texas, as a private. Is that right?
So this is the way it goes, and I don't know how this happened. Even when I was up at branch as a branch manager, I still ended up doing it to myself. So I was at first at Fort Hood, then I went to Korea, then I was back at Hood, then I was in recruiting, then back at Hood, then I went up to went to Iraq, then I went to branch, and then from branch I went back to Fort Hood and retired. But in between that time, I mean, shit, did the first Clear Skies mission up in DC a year after 9/11. Went to Iraq, went to Qatar, went to Kuwait. Like I said, I was up there at Branch, went all over for that. And I don't know. Like I said, the last time I did it, I went back to Hood. I sort of screwed myself because I was a Sergeant First Class. I just hit 9 years or 19 years. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to go ahead and retire because I wasn't expecting to make the E8 list. And one of the reasons I say that is because it took me so long to make the E7 list. So what I had done at the time, I was the 14 Zulu manager before we got somebody up there. And I had restructured all the 14 Zulus in the Army. And lo and behold, I don't know how it happened, but I made the 8 list. So I was originally going to go to Fort Lewis, but because I made the 8 list and restructured the whole branch, did the whole assignment thing, the only place I could go be a first sergeant was down at 69th Brigade at Fort Hood. So it's like I couldn't win for losing.
Hey, but you got to have great ties to the Fort Hood and Killeen area and love going back time and time again, right?
Well, now both my kids live around that area. My oldest 22 and my youngest 15. And amazingly enough, and this is going to sound crazy, but once every other month, I still drive the 4 hours down there and the 4 hours back to get my hair cut. All right. Now, if you tell that's some commitment to somebody that cuts my hair. And the girl that cuts my hair, her name is Ashley Geike, and she's actually a former paratrooper as well. She was over in either Italy or Alaska or somewhere. But yeah, I mean, her and her husband, Seth Geike, he's a retired, I don't remember what he did with it when he was retired. I know he's an infantry guy, sniper at one point, and then he had to reclass, but he retired. But they've kind of become my second family. So like I said, once every other month, I'll go and get my hair cut down there. And because my commitment runs that deep.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So it's nice to have friends that you have a deep connection with like that, right? You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and there's not many people that I really actually, you talked about communicating and keep up, but there's not too many people that I actually make a valiant, consistent attempt to keep up. But I do have a certain few that I do.
Yeah, I could do better at keeping up with a lot of people. I really could. What is it about your drive that gets you up in the morning? Is there something that gets you going, gets you excited?
Well, so after I retired, I came up here to the Fort Sill area. I live out in a town called Fletcher, but I call it Mayberry. Um, and I was actually teaching 14 Sierra as a civilian instructor. I did that for about a year, and then I transitioned over to this other company where we teach a counter drone system to the Marines and the Air Force. So honestly, just motivation to get up is, and I don't want this to sound negative, but so my father, before he passed away a year after he retired for good. And my mother had already been passed away for, oh man, 6-7 years, something like that. And it wasn't that, grief and everything, but, once you go down doing something all your life, and then now every day is either Saturday or Sunday in your book, you got to keep yourself up and going. That way, as I stated before, you don't wake up dead.
Hey, that's for sure. I agree with that. What is it that you do to maintain your health? Do you work out? Do you exercise? Do jiu-jitsu or anything like that?
Well, right now, as you can see what I'm doing these curls with this bottle, but I try to improve on my cardio. I definitely got to drop some weight because I put on some weight over the past year. That was because my personal life went to shit. But between that, I like to go fishing, even though I'm not very good at it. And I'm more of a good luck charm for people because anybody I go with, they always catch everything and I don't get anything. Um, I like to try and be outside as much as I can when I'm not stuck behind this computer doing work or doing homework. And, just I try to be active. Sometimes the motivation just isn't there. And, much like every year, it seems to keep getting hotter around summertime. And there's sometimes where I think, you know what? I'm not getting paid to be out here right now. So I'm not in full battle rattle and I'm not TDY on a trip. So I think I'm going to enjoy this AC.
Amen. Amen. What? So tell me about, Sergeant Hewitt. Tell me about becoming a sergeant. Was that something that went easy for you?
Yes and no. And, my story was the similar as Michael Cornish because he came in 1 month before I did. And it took a while just because the Army had put a freeze on E3 to E4 promotions. So you had to wait like the full 26 months. And then, the funny story is it took me forever to get into PLDC. And that was back when you would show up like a week, 2 weeks before you take the PT test, and then you show up on day 0, and either you get in or you don't because of the OML. And it took me 5 times to get into PLDC because either I just wasn't that high up on the OML list. There was a couple times where, for some reason, my packet didn't make it to the division and everything. But as a Sergeant Hewitt, well, first, once I graduated PLDC, I was a corporal, which I still say the best rank to have in the Army is corporal and first sergeant. And the corporal, because you're one of the leaders, but you're almost not one of the leaders. You could get away with a lot more as a corporal. And then as a first sergeant, it's like the first sergeant to me, and that's why I didn't ever have any aspirations to be a sergeant major, was because the first sergeant to me was like the last link in small unit leadership, small unit management. You're at the company level and everything. Because once you go up to the sergeant major level, I mean, you got a whole battalion of like 100, 200, 300, 400 people. And it's not as personal because the biggest thing I came up under the Roland regime, and one of the biggest things with him, and I had this one first sergeant that influenced me coming up, which was a guy named James E. Ford, or as he would tell you, the prettiest MFer in the battery. But their big thing was you got to know your soldiers. So, and it threw me for a loop because when I went to my promotion board, they were like, all right, when's the last time you contacted your gunner's parents? And I was like, I didn't even know I was supposed to do that. But it was that. You got to know people because the more that you know people, the more that you can influence them. And as a young sergeant, I was still a little bit of I would say a spitfire or whatever, because, there's a difference, and I'll probably touch on this later too, but there's a difference between being an asshole and upholding a standard and being an asshole just for the sake of being an asshole. And I ran into too many of those people.
Say more about that. Say more about that leadership style, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, I'll even tell you about it. I'm retired, so like, what can happen to me? But there was this one guy, and he was actually my SGL and BNOC, and then later on he was my brigade sergeant major. His name was Michael Brown, and this is the guy that was just an asshole just for being an asshole, and he was actually part of the reason that I decided to go ahead and hang it up and retire, because before my last deployment to Qatar, he got all of us first sergeants together, and he made it a point to tell us that as a battalion sergeant major in Afghanistan, he made sure to have a crease in his uniform. And I was thinking, if that is what your priority, then as a sergeant major in Afghanistan, if I was some Joe on the fob, I would laugh you off of the fob. And I mean, this guy, he was one of those that, big Audie Murphy and Audie Murphy this, but, none of that stuff matters when you retire. There isn't an employer out there that's going to ask you, hey, were you ever Audie Murphy? And I mean, this is the same guy who had also sexually harassed his subordinates and female soldiers, but yet never got caught up in it. And the sad thing is that a lot of people, senior leaders in the branch, even when you mention his name today, they'll be like, man, that guy. But, you got to take from the good and the bad. Outside of him, the only other bad leader I ever had was my very first platoon sergeant first class, Michael Gene Brashear. And the only reason I say that about him is he was a drunk. And Brashear was a drunk that abused power. Now, some of the positives I had was, like I said, First Sergeant Ford, Sergeant Major Charles Williams. I know his name isn't familiar. So James Ford taught me how to be a sergeant, and Charles Williams taught me how to be an NCO. And like with that, because he was all about taking care of each other, and he was real big into the NCO Corps. Just like I was either on CQ or staff duty one day, and he, as a sergeant major, came in one weekend to walk the barracks, and evidently some sergeant in the battery had gotten a DWI a previous night or whatever. He's like, hey, why'd you let a Sergeant so-and-so get a DWI? We're supposed to be taking care of each other. And I was like, look, Sergeant Major, I understand what you're getting at. But if you're telling me that I got to look after a grown adult that week after week after week gets the same safety briefing, has the same recall rosters as everybody else, and can't do the simple thing of calling somebody to come pick them up and they've had too much to drink, then they deserve what happens to them, and sorry about their damn luck.
What did he say to that?
He was like, understood. But I mean, and another story about Charles Williams that always stuck with me. And he had just taken over as the battalion sergeant major. And he would actually go out and check Sergeantstown. And we were at some field location doing crew drills. And I don't even remember what it was I was instructing with the crew drills. But he came out and he checked my stuff. And the only thing he had to say was, where's everybody's mop gear? And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you got task condition and standards posted here about this is what's going to happen with mop 0 and everything. And you have the standards for mop 2, 3, and 4. Where's everybody's mop gear? And it was just something small like that, because it wasn't necessarily the fact that even though I had it on the task conditions and standards, that wasn't there, but it was how you were going to react to the rest of that. So in the future, the easy wrong would have been, hey, don't put the mop gear on there. But what I did after that, hey, we're going to have mop gear, bring it out here, and we're going to train just like what I put on here. And it was small things like that. And he was also a big proponent into soldier care. And, soldier care, it's not days off. It's making sure everybody's stuff's up to date, med pros, vaccinations. They know their freaking job and all that stuff. So it was kind of like a developmental process.
It's interesting how it takes sometimes we think maybe somebody's getting upset at us just to learn a little bit, or we have to make a mistake, and how much we actually learn from those small mistakes in training that could cost our lives in battle,
Yeah. Yeah. And, that was that was his big thing. And then after him, then I unfortunately had the misfortune to go into recruiting, and that was 3 years of my life I'll never get back.
So what was the hardest part about recruiting? Was it just dealing with your bosses that were under the same kind of pressure you were, or was it something different?
So I tell you, not necessarily. Well, it was the leaders plus the time, and I say that because, and I still talk to some of the people I used to recruit with, and they were really good people. But some of the leadership that we'd worked for had been in recruiting for so long, they forgot what it was like. I mean, I got threatened with being court-martialed because I had people that I had enlisted that didn't want to ship. However, this was like right when the war um, took off, and that's when CNN was broadcasting everything, and I was recruiting right next to Fort Bliss on Dyer Street. So the war kicked off. 24 hours after the war kicked off, and you see a bunch of people getting blown up and all this stuff. I had 8 deps with less than 30 days to ship that they didn't want to go. And then the whole thing with the 507th happened, which was right there at Bliss. Oh, and to include, one of the POWs that we captured was a graduate of the high school that I had. So yeah, it was a little rough. Recruiting, even though I couldn't stand recruiting, and I spent more time at even though I spent more time at Michael Cornish's drill sergeant office than I did at my recruiting office, it kind of helped me get out of my shell about actually being able to go up and talk to people. But it also opened my eyes as far as the politics of the world and how local communities perceive the Army. Case in point, I was up in Northeast El Paso. A lot of the Sergeant Major Academy students up there were going to our high schools and stuff, and I would call these people that were like students at the academy, like, no, I'm not going to send my kid to the Army. I'm going to send my kid to the Air Force. And I was like, so the loyalty block on your NCOER should be checked no, huh? And then they'd get mad and everything. Or when Pat Tillman got killed, I called some kid's house. I was talking to their parent. My parent was like, well, yeah, I like everything that y'all guys are doing. I support y'all and everything, but I don't want a dead hero. So it's just dealing with stuff like that out there. I mean, like I said, the people I recruited with were good. Some of the people I even put in the Army, I still talk to. But I would have made a better drill sergeant than I did a recruiter.
Oh wow. So do you remember a particular, like, do you remember the first person you signed up, or the most difficult one? That do you remember one particular person?
Oh yeah, one of them, his name was Christopher Kozak, and I enlisted him. But then after I enlisted him, probably about 3 weeks before he was supposed to ship, he went ghost on me. So I did a stakeout on him because I wasn't about to lose this fool. And so there were some times where I would like real early in the morning, or I'd be coming home at night, I'd be go stake out his place. And then the day that he was supposed to ship, so this fool, he lived in a 2-story house in Northeast El Paso. And so I go to pick him up. His parents had gone out of town. They'd already said all their goodbyes and everything. I mean, the kid was in his 20s, but he was still living at home. And I go up to his house, and I'm knocking on the door, and I'm ringing the doorbell and stuff, and I can see this kid in his living room. Bags are there, but he's laid out like TA-50, ready for inspection on the couch, just knocked out. So I actually had to break into this fool's home and I'm in Class B uniform, climbing up the side of this dude's house, and I go in through the upstairs window, and I come down in there and I kick him in the foot, and I was like, hey, you got somewhere you're supposed to be? He's like, how you get in here? I'm like, you never know where I may be. And he actually shipped out. He actually did a few years, but then he found out he liked marijuana more than being in the Army.
Oh my gosh, that was so great. So you climbed up to the second floor in Class B's, shimmied through this open window that you noticed, and went and got your recruit to train in her.
Oh yeah, oh
Wow.
yeah, yeah. No, the only other kid I remember was a kid named Craig Tidwell, and this was a guy who actually didn't enlist for me because I took him down there and he did a Q&E, qualified, not enlisted. But the only reason that I remember him is because I don't know what it was, but in these GOVs they gave us to drive, I never took it off talk radio, even though I didn't really listen to the news. I didn't really listen to talk radio. But here I am driving this fool to the MEPS about 5:30 in the morning. And that's when the news came over that Johnny Cash died. And I pulled over on the side of the road and openly wept in front of this kid. And he's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Johnny Cash died." And he's like, "Who's that?" And I said, "I will kick you out of this vehicle and I'll leave you in the desert to die if you ever ask me that again." Which may have influenced him not joining the army that day. But hey, I think it was, I just couldn't believe he said that to me with a straight face.
So look, it's amazing. I'm laughing. I'm laughing. So look, we got G-Man, we got Jacobitz, we got Sutton, we got Joseph, all here watching for sure. Oh my gosh, who else? Who else? We got Harris, Compton. Oh my gosh,
Oh yeah,
Cornish,
a lot of people that know me,
Benson.
I guess.
Oh wow, Knight, McManus. Look, we got 20 people in here. Okay, so if you're in here listening, please like the thing right now. Hit it and tell us, hey, we like you, we appreciate you, we thank you for your support. I'm here with Christopher Hewitt, Heroes Live. We're telling our stories, getting our oral history before we're too sick or too old to tell the story, right? And that's what we're doing. We're having a good time. We're having a drink or two. What are you drinking?
Shiner Bock.
Oh,
I only drink Shiner, Budweiser, or Bud Light.
oh
I'm not a
wow.
big liquor guy, but yeah, well, and it's rare that I drink out of bottles because normally I drink out of cans. But I have my own YouTube channel, which is where I basically do stupid things on YouTube, or I
Oh
pay my
really?
kids. Oh yeah, or I pay my kids to do stupid things. Like the most recent thing I did was I paid my oldest and my youngest son $200 each to eat this hot sauce, and it was a significant emotional event in their life. And I also now possess the world's hottest gummy bear, which is like 9 million or 13 million Scovilles, which we're still trying to come up with a dollar amount that I'm comfortable with to pay them to eat it. The only downside to it is I got three of them, so I'm going to eat one of them before they do. So it could be the final times of Christopher Hewitt.
No way. So, all right. So you have a YouTube channel, and the main thing you do on there is just dare your kids to do things, or do you do other stuff too?
Well, I'll do that. I want to say I used to have on there when I used to wake my children up with a megaphone. Um, I'll cut some stupid wrestling promos. I've documented both of my colonoscopies on there. Um, and it's been something else. Like my last colonoscopy I went to, I showed up with the world title in my Ric Flair robe, and they asked me for some ID, and I threw my world title at them, and they're like, "We need a picture ID, sir," and I'm like, "It says Hewitt right there, world's champion," but they weren't going for it.
So, so what is it that makes you want to slip in between like the wrestling world and the real world? Like how? I mean, how do you expect everybody just if you carry the belt around, everybody should know that you're in the wrestling world?
Well, I've taken it everywhere. So that particular belt you saw earlier, I've taken on every deployment I went to. I took it to Iraq, uh, Kuwait, Qatar. Now, whenever I travel around, I take a different belt with me. Um, and I don't know, it's sort of like what I became known for, because I mean, there'll be people on the rare times I make an appearance on post and actually go to some sort of event that people will be like, hey, it's the champ. And like I want to say like the last thing I went to on post was one of my former soldiers, a kid named Jason Abatua. He had taken over his first battery, and I went there and I talked to some people, and they were like, "Yeah, it's the champ and shit." And I don't know, it's just sort of become my trademark. Even when I was first sergeant, I uh, I even had my belt in my office, and I would anytime a soldier would come in to see me, I'd be like, "You want a shot at the title?"
So, all right. So, who took you up on it? Did you like go to head? Did you ever like get called out and have to go into the pit with somebody and wrestle or whatever? We had to do that. We did that sometimes at Bragg. Did you ever have to do that?
No, nobody was that stupid, because unlike people that normally abide by the rules, I'm much like the nature boy. I'm the dirtiest player in the game. So if I gotta hit you, or if I gotta hit you in the nuts, or back in 1999, Michael Cornish and I had a Korean death match out at one of the ranges. And you remember the bats that we used to shoot at live fire, right? So I took the cone off of one of those bats and I nailed the shit out of him. And to this day, I think he still has a indentation in his head. But
So,
we used to get pretty wild. But then it got to the higher up you get, the less that you're able to do. Although one of the things I was up until I was a first sergeant, so from when I was a Joe all the way up until I was a platoon sergeant, anytime we would go out to the field as a platoon or as a battery, at least one night out of the FTX, I would strip off all and I even had tidy whities just for this situation. But I would strip off all my clothes and I'd walk around in my boots, tidy whities, with my mask, weapon, and my Kevlar, and I'd go up to people's vehicles. I'd be like, "Hey, have y'all seen my BDUs?" And there was one time the platoon sergeant, which was Sergeant Leonard, and he was a real holy guy. He called. I just laid down into the fart sack, and he's like, he needed to see the NCO. So I was like, you know what? Screw this. So I went over there, and he was like, "Sir Hewitt, why do you think anybody wants to see you naked?" I'm like, "I'm not naked. I got my weapon." And it was right there. I think he thought I was the Antichrist or something. But the more that you get up into it, the less you can do. So before I left HRC to go back to the real Army, one of my friends up there, he's a guy in Field Artillery Branch. His name's Rich Powell. And he would always, he told me about, when he was a leader, he had a list on his desk of things that you can't do. So I kind of expounded on that. So when I was a first sergeant, it was under the glass of my desk. And I had a list of things that I was told that you can't say or do as a first sergeant. And evidently it took like a life of its own. And every time my EO or my sharp person said, "Hey, first sergeant, you really can't say that or do that," I would put that on my list, and I would never say it again.
so I saw a list like that going around the internet. Were you the author of that list?
No, that depends. I can give you a few examples if you'd like.
Go ahead.
You can't tell a soldier you are the sole reason that we are losing the global war on terrorism because they are late to formation.
Yeah, that's the list I saw. Go ahead, keep going.
When approached by a soldier about a rumor of two soldiers engaging in intimate liaisons in the hot cruise shack, you cannot ask if there is video evidence that you can review to confirm it. Oh, let's see. Oh, this is one that it didn't get me in trouble, but it definitely got me a talking to. When dealing with a female officer in an S shot that seems incompetent and isn't giving you the answers that specifically deal with her shot, you cannot ask, "Is there a man that I can talk to and deal with?"
No,
So,
no. Yeah. If that's true, that'd probably get you in a couple of hot waters, right?
well, that's one of two lists. So that's the list of things that I couldn't say or do as a first time, but I also keep a separate list for my own personal enjoyment, which is the list of Hewitt, which is a list of people or things that have wronged me throughout my life that I will seek vengeance on at some point in my life.
Oh,
Which,
really?
yeah, which ironically, that Sergeant Major I was talking about earlier, Michael Brown, he's the only person on this list that's on there 3 times. Although Michael Cornish is on there with 2, and then various other people throughout life and history. And it doesn't even have to relate to the Army either.
So, so this vengeance. I mean, is it going to be like you're going to send them I don't know, a box of M and M's that taste crappy or something, or are you going to like send them a nuclear email bomb or something?
I'm going to send them me.
And all your glory with your tidy whities on, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you remember, what was that movie, Billy Madison, where he calls the guy and apologizes, and he marks him off the list of people that he needs to kill.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect, right? So, okay. So, tell me who's on this list and what it's about, so that I'll know. So, I'll make sure I'm not on it, I guess.
Well, number 1 on the list is Sergeant Major Michael Brown for crimes against humanity, the Army, and this country by putting hard times on Christopher Hewitt. Um, Various people are on there, like Specialist Rudock. I put him on there one time for just leering in my general direction. Um, I put Ric Flair on there for putting hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. Um, Also, I put Clubber Lang on there because I actually bet on the first fight between him and Rocky, and I didn't expect Clubber Lang to win.
I got some sound effects. I got keep going. Keep going.
The city of Killeen Sanitation for charging me for extra trash. My therapist for suggesting that this list wasn't healthy for me.
There you go. That one. That one. Keep going.
Let's see, overweight soldier for being a tub of guts. Horn for giving me unrealistic expectations. Oh, this is a good one. And this is when Master Sergeant Clifton Earl Rush went on TDY. And so what he did for directing all S3 business to me during his TDY, meaning I got calls from people I don't know about matters that I didn't even know about. So yeah, he really let's see, Michael Brown again for being born for as payback for the sins of man. Lee
Oh
Harvey,
no. Oh, Michael Brown is gonna get your wrath for being born because of
as
what?
as payback for the sins of man.
Okay. Okay. I love it. Keep
Let's see, I
going.
got Lee Harvey Oswald on there. And you know, one of the biggest things, and uh, I'll end it with this: is a lot of people after I retired and I finally decided to grow a beard out and everything, and it still happens at least 1 to 3 times a week. Somebody comes at me and says, "Hey, you know, you look like that guy Abraham Ford off The Walking Dead." Do you know who that is?
No, I don't. I don't.
Well, he also played somebody in Band of Brothers as well, and I think he was in some show called Southland. But if you look up the actor Michael Cudlitz, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
Um, Evidently, everybody thinks I look like this guy, which is amazing because he actually follows me on Twitter because I do have a Twitter. But the only reason that I have a Twitter is so I can troll OJ Simpson.
Okay. So tell me about trolling OJ Simpson. Tell me about that.
So that's Michael Cudlitz,
Okay.
and that's me
Okay.
next to him.
All right. Cool.
So for years, people kept telling me to get a Twitter, so I did, and I didn't realize the point of it. But I was like, let's see who's on Twitter. I just started looking at stuff. I saw OJ Simpson. I was like, well. So periodically, I will go on there and I'll put a message like the other day. It was like the anniversary of him doing his little trip down the freeway and everybody chasing at him. And I said, so I'm going to take a stab in the dark here, but how good was the gas mileage on your Bronco? And he hasn't blocked me yet. And the whole reason I troll him is honestly, I have nothing better to do with my time.
So you have Twitter and you troll, and so you just ask him random questions. So I'm not a Twitter person. I tried to learn Twitter. If you guys are trying to do something about Twitter, make sure, what's your Twitter handle, Christopher?
Nozo Grande.
Nozo Grande.
Noso Grande.
That's awesome. Mine is Will Marshall 68. So yeah, follow us on Twitter. I'll follow you, and but I'm a total. You can troll me, if you want on Twitter.
Well, I actually like you, so I mean,
I don't understand all that. I don't understand all the trolling stuff. So I got called a troll before, and people thought I was fake and stuff. I wrote an essay about we have a Confederate monument in my hometown. I wrote an essay about how I thought they should move it, and they couldn't believe that I was a real person.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I've gotten banned off social media a few times, but that's only because I've gone on there and I've seen some story about. So the last time I got banned on Facebook was there was a social media post about somebody that was upset because they married a hologram, and it was, I don't know, some stuff. And I put the comment on there that people like that just need to have their ass kicked. And evidently I was inciting violence on Twitter.
Well, hey, I get it. Well, they don't know how good you are at telling the difference between the cold bottle and the hot bottle. They don't even know.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So tell me about like being after you leave recruiting and come back. Tell me what was the next step?
So after I left recruiting, I'd been a staff sergeant for like 4 or 5 years, and I came back, and the battery I went to, my first sergeant was actually my old SGL at BNOC, a guy named Alan T. Smith, with an emphasis on the T. Don't forget that. And he was a pretty good first sergeant. I told him because he just wanted me to take over as a platoon sergeant. I was like, no, give me about 6 months. Let me go through a table 8, a table 10 evaluation, live fire. Let me remember how to do all this stuff, and I'll do it. And he gave me that opportunity, and I came back, and then I stepped into the platoon sergeant spot, which it wasn't too bad. The only thing I could say about the first platoon that I had was, I don't know if this was like planned or whatever, but every NCO I had in the platoon was on like a walking profile. So I was like, well, shit. However, that actually played out pretty decent. as far as like when we come to physical training, because there would be times where I would have them give PT, but we would do like their version of the PT test. And everybody would always laugh at, oh, the walkers, they got it easy and everything. All right, well, let's take their version of it. And they weren't laughing at the end of it, because for you to walk that far at that pace and try to maintain, if you're not used to it, then yeah, it's going to get you. Much like, and this goes back to when I was recruiting, I had to give a soldier a PT test, and he opted to do the bike. Well, at the time, I went and checked at the NCO Academy at Fort Hood, or Fort Bliss, but there was something up with their bikes or whatever. So we had to go down to Planet Fitness or wherever it was, EP Fitness in El Paso, and I had this dude named Serrano. He's a Puerto Rican guy, and he will let you know he is from Puerto Rico. And he had never done it before, so we're in EP Fitness. It's crowded. I'm like, all right, this is what you got to do for the bike. It's been checked out. I've verified everything. And he started doing it. And this fool embarrassed me in this place, because he was like, I'm dying. I mean, loud Puerto Rican accent. I'm dying. I can't do it. And he actually passed it by like 2 seconds. And I told him, I'm never doing this with you again. I'm like, don't ever ask for me. Don't ever volunteer to do this. Just do the damn walk. But going back wasn't that bad, because then you transition. Then we got ready to go do the C-Rail mission in Iraq, and that's where I first met old Paris Williams. And I had this guy named Stephen Flack as my first sergeant. And, Flack wasn't that bad. I mean, he and I bumped heads because, we had two different ways of thinking. Very smart guy. Liked, although he did like to quote the manuals and the regulations, which is fine. But sometimes you got to do some outside of the box thinking. But, went and did that year in Iraq. And the best thing I could say about that year in Iraq is, despite everything that happened, never lost anyone, which is what you always want. But, it kind of brings you closer. But the sad thing is that a few of the soldiers from the platoon I took to Iraq are no longer with us, whether it be illness or things that were self-inflicted. It kind of sucks. And the biggest hit that it did to me, or like, and it's a question I heard you ask before, like, what was your longest day? And it didn't even involve somebody that I was working with in an operation with or whatever. But my lieutenant from Iraq, Captain Douglas John Rosinski, I want to say it was like March, April of 16. He had gotten killed in a auto accident. I don't know all the specifics of it, but that's the one that kind of hurt the most, just because he and I worked closely while we were together in Iraq. And, even though he was younger than me, but yeah, outranked me, it was it was hard. Not only hard brotherly, but I would also say hard fatherly, because you take the young lieutenant under your arm, and yeah, he didn't get along with some of the people in the platoon, but we made it work. And that one kind of hurt when I found out he had passed. I don't know, because, and it's just like every year on his birthday or the anniversary of when he passed. I'm honest, he used to get on my fucking nerves, but it was a good thing, and I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have had it any other way. So I don't know, that I don't even know where I was going with that rant, but yeah, there it is.
What What is it about our brotherhood that connects us to those that we're deployed with, right? Isn't that crazy?
Well, I think it's because you spend so much time around each other, even when you don't want to see each other every day. You kind of think of each other as um, family, and you have each other's back. I mean, even every now and then. I mean, going back to the communication thing. There's certain soldiers, former soldiers, people that I actually put forth the effort. But that's some of it is brotherly, and I guess some of it would be as fatherly. I mean, case in point, one of my former soldiers, she's out in California. Her name's Victoria Massa, and she's actually going to film school for something in like music production. I told her, look, I'll make you a deal. If you graduate from college and do this, I will bring my tired ass all the way out to California and I will go to your graduation, but you have to graduate first. It's just one of those things where I was lucky I had a family before I joined the army. I mean, there was nothing really bad about my upbringing, but some people don't have that. And then you latch on to either what you think a family is or what you want your family to be. And then once you do that, it's like permanent.
Did you mold and meld well with the Army values? Did you see that as a great thing like I did when it came about?
Yes and no, because I mean, so and you're going to hear this all the time with people that retire or people that get out, and they're like, "Oh well, the army's changed, and it's not the same army I came into." No shit. In order to be a relevant organization, you have to be able to be transformational, and you have to adapt to modern times. I mean, I remember when the Army values came out, and everybody had to carry around the dog tag and memorize leadership and everything. Just like whenever you get a new commanding general on the post, like we got this commanding general on Fort Hood, Tom Schwartz, and he came out with tips, TIPS. Talk to your soldiers, keep your soldiers informed, be predictable, be sensitive to your soldiers' needs. It's you're always going to have somebody that has something, and you have to adapt it and make it your own. Not just because you're going to get what's the saying? You're going to get more flies with honey if it comes from you as a leader than if the army says we have to do this. Yeah, no shit, but make it your own. That way you're not putting the blame and everything on the army and everything. Now, do I think that the army has some policies or whatever that at the time when I was in I didn't agree with? Yeah, just like it. I actually had to move two soldiers out of my battery because they got engaged to each other. But yet, okay, I have one soldier in one battery, and now you're wanting me to move this soldier to another country when it was in Qatar and Bahrain. Some of that stuff I don't agree with, but you're all a cog in the machine. You have to support the machine sometimes, even when you don't agree with it.
Amen.
But if you're going to support it and not agree with it, make it your own instead of passing the buck or the blame on to someone else.
So did you say you went to the National Capital Region?
Yeah, so it was like a year after September 11th, and it was me and a couple of soldiers. We were on top of the Washington Naval Annex with live missiles, looking down. I think it was the Potomac River. I think there was a Stinger team on top of the White House. We had Avengers at the Pentagon and everything, and the pucker factor was pretty high. But the biggest thing that I always remembered about that is because we'd be up there day and night sleeping on the top of this parking garage. But it amazes me that the National Capital Region was where all the government and everything is, and everything's supposed to be nice and all this stuff. Yet in the outlying neighborhoods around the capital region, you can hear gunshots at night. That always just struck me pretty funny.
Yeah, it's interesting how our nation's capital um, is built, and the group of people that grew up, around it. If you were in the nice neighborhood, you belonged to a certain sort of family and a certain sort of thing. And if you were in the other neighborhood that was just a block and a half away, there were gunshots and the police wouldn't go, and it was a mess. And that's the way in a lot of places. Do you remember a certain deployment or a country or a place you went to that was markedly different from the United States of America?
Oh yeah, definitely. Kuwait and Qatar, more specifically, like Kuwait, and the reason being, and not even when I was deployed, but so as a contractor, I've had to go over to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia twice, and it amazes me because of course, you got the long flight over there. We get the rental car at the airport. We leave at 1 o'clock in the morning, which would put us at Prince Sultan Air Base, or like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And it would be, as we were driving there, it would be packed like a normal day. And I'm like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Where are all these people going? Because it's not like they got booze over there. So, and it wasn't like there was big clubs or parties and everything. But I guess it was just because it's so much cooler at night to go out and do stuff, and it just would amaze me. Um, as far as you know, Kuwait and Qatar, two different deployments. Because Kuwait, we were at Camp Buring, and Qatar, we were at Al Udeid. Qatar was like a resort. Like I don't understand how people. I don't know. It just seemed like a vacation, whereas over there in Camp Buring, it was almost like we've been at war for like 20 plus years or whatever. You're telling me you can't do better than this. So it's like one of those things, but it is what it is. And then Iraq was kind of different because not less than a month in, where we were staying at in our CHU area, got freaking mortared. And I mean, you could walk around and see all the spots on the ground. One of my soldiers had a piece of shrapnel in his pillow. Um, I'd been sitting in my room screwing around on a computer, and if I would have been leaning my head back probably about 2 inches, I wouldn't have a head because there was a hole on this side and a hole on that side of the room.
Wow.
And it was just some of that stuff, and I don't know, when you get bombed and mortared on a consistent basis, you kind of get used to it, which really shouldn't be normal. And then, the only after effects I ever really suffered from that is I used to be a deep sleeper, but I'm not. And then, like iPhones, they have like a certain alarm on them that sounds like the incoming CRAM alarm. That sometimes when I hear it, it puts me on edge, but that's about it.
So, what did you think about working on the CRAM? Did you operate that piece of equipment?
Complicated. So, um, a lot of moving pieces. It definitely prepared me for this job that I was doing as far as getting more in depth with FAD and how the network operates, but very complicated because a lot of the train up I wasn't a part of because platoon sergeant, we had a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So much like I said, because I wasn't Patriot until I was a first sergeant. So much like I would say when dealing with Patriot, I knew enough just to be dangerous, which is what got me by. But I mean, the biggest, I mean, yeah, I had 14 series that was doing the CRAM job, but my hats were off to the people in Como. Or I even had a guy that was the NBC guy that was doing it. And for them to step out of their MOS and learn how to do that and how they performed, it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's neat how look, especially if you're deployed, a soldier just wants to be a part of the team and help. Doesn't want to be ostracized. Doesn't want any special anything, but just needs to be felt a part of the team. So if you're an NBC NCO over there that doesn't have anything to do, to be allowed in to do something, part of just being a stupid staff weenie or filling out a 1594 all the time, they love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. And then, I don't know, it's kind of a little bit of a difference because as soon as I came back from Iraq, not even 90 days later, I was up at HRC Fort Knox working on these damn assignments and stuff.
So what was that like going to that's like an office job.
Yeah. So it wasn't bad. It definitely took the blinders off as far as how big Army operates. And it definitely put it into the toolkit as a leader, about how the Army operates, how you have to fill manning requirements and everything. I mean, I had a really good crew up there. When I was up there, old Craig Evans was transitioning out. Like one day he was in uniform, and then a few days later he showed up in a suit. And then with the Sergeant Major we had, she was pretty good. And I liked the concept that they did, because when I got up there, what they did, I mean, I could be wrong about it, but so the Sergeant Major that was in every branch was mainly like a 42. So that way there was no buddy, none of this other good old boy club bullshit. And she handled herself pretty good. And I had two great OICs up there. One of them was Colonel Shalisa Jeter, who at first she was up there for 79 days when she got selected for battalion command and had to leave. But then the current CG for 32nd, old Dave Stewart, he was up there. And, it was another thing of, he was very humble, very down to earth, willing to listen. And the biggest thing that I got from Dave Stewart was, and he always used to keep this picture up in his office of Sisyphus. Do you know who that is?
No.
So, long story short, the tale of Sisyphus is, it was in Greek mythology, and I forgot what it was, what he did, but Sisyphus would always have to roll this heavy boulder up a hill. But every time he got the boulder up there, it would always roll down. So, like his punishment, sort of like with, oh man, I can't remember. I don't know if it was Hercules or Apollos, or Atlas that had to hold the world on his shoulders. All right, Sisyphus, he would always be having to roll this boulder up. And with Dave Stewart, what he taught me was, no matter what the job is, the boulder always gets bigger. And how much can you put it up there, and can you get it to stay up there? But it was really a good learning experience, how, I guess, like the admin of the Army worked.
Oh, yeah.
Now I took over for somebody that was like I wouldn't say a VIP, but at the time he was well known in the Air Defense Branch, a guy named Youngama. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nothing against Triple J or whatever, but, to come out of that shadow and make it my own was definitely something. Now, I mean, I'll be honest, there were people that didn't like some of the assignments I put them on, but, I mean, the Army pays you to go somewhere, go somewhere.
Yeah, it is interesting to have a face, to have someone to hate and say, that Hewitt guy, that Jongama guy, that Evans guy, he sent me off to Korea and I didn't want to go. And,
I mean, who does?
Yeah, of course, you're sitting there going, look, dude, you homesteaded at Hood for 6 years. You got to go somewhere. We called you 2 years ago. We called you last year. And look, it's too late now.
Well, I mean, and it's not funny, but it's funny, but it's not funny. But, like, it was rough during NFL season, because anytime the Cowboys would lose, I'd go in the next day and put 10 soldiers on assignment to Korea to feel better.
You're a dick, man. That's so funny, man. That is hilarious, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. So, what was it like to become a first sergeant in a Patriot unit?
Rough, because honestly, the only thing I really knew about Patriot was what I'd heard, like the stories. The main stories being the van and what happens in the van. Um, but and the thing is so I PCS from Knox to Hood. I got to Hood in July of 13, and September of 14, we were downrange. I'd missed train up. All the equipment had already been rail loaded and sent off. Literally, when I took over the battery, as far as the change of responsibility ceremony, because everybody was tasked out, instead of a battery behind me, it looked like a platoon behind me, maybe even an orderly room. But getting over there and getting acclimated, it was both good and bad. And the reason I say good and bad, so it was good because I was actually getting to see stuff in action, even though I didn't exactly know what was going on. I remember the first time I walked into the van, I had this soldier in there. She was a specialist. Her name was Elizabeth Christine Hecox. And uh, I was like, all right, Specialist Hecox, look, I don't know anything about this. Tell me what's going on in here and don't spare anything. So she went through and she told me about every control. That's when I learned a button wasn't a button, but it's a switch indicator. Um, Told me everything. She spent like probably 30 to 40 minutes giving me a brief on everything. I mean, it was the best damn brief I ever received. After she was done, I was like, you know what? You did a good job, but I didn't understand a damn thing you just told me. I said, right now, can we put a missile in the air? And she was like, yes, First Sergeant. And I said, all right, so if that answer is ever no, tell me and tell me why we can't, and we'll be good. And after that, she was straight, and she actually became one of my best NCOs, young hard charger, and it was good. The downside of it was I had a commander, and her and I just did not mesh, did not get along because she wouldn't listen to me, and she wasn't very personable. She would much rather spend all of her time on site and stay on site all day and all night doing admin stuff and doing everything she needed to do. And there were times where I almost physically had to pull her out of the office just to go around and talk to the soldiers. I mean, know the people that are under your command and stuff. All right. And that was probably about the only bad thing about it, except for the fact of, so in the middle of the deployment, I'd switch batteries because they realized that her and I weren't mixing. She ended up actually getting a letter of concern. I did too, just because I was the first sergeant. But as soon as I signed it, it went in the shredder. The sergeant major put it in the shredder. He's like, hey, the only reason I have to give this to you is because you're the first sergeant. But we're going to we're going to switch batteries. So they switched me and another first sergeant out. And things were actually getting pretty good. The only thing that I regret about that is I had to leave that deployment early because my father had gotten sick and he didn't tell anyone, but then it had just progressed worse and worse. And unfortunately, he passed away. But as far as getting into the Patriot world, once I figured out, okay, this is what the Big Five is and this is what it does, and these are the small, stupid things that can decertify a battery, okay, I was good.
I love it. I love it.
But I mean, it's like I always tell people, platoon sergeant and first sergeant are the same thing, except on different scales. Yeah, you gotta know the job, but your job is more personnel management, admin, and mentorship than it is actually being there running cables and stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So did you get a chance to be a first sergeant again? Did you keep, did you go back to the unit or tell
Yeah,
me about the end?
yeah. So near the end, I after that all happened, I went over and I was a first sergeant in 162, and I got paired up with this great commander. His name's Chase Pittman, but I always used to call him Handsome Six because I mean, as a matter of fact, he is. That's his photo right there, because I gave him my autographed DA photo one time, and so he autographed a DA photo for me. But he was very, very smart. He and I were like always on the same page, and if it wasn't for him and my other first sergeants I had with me, Joe Wilkerson and Clifton Rush, and then later on when I worked for at the time Major Steve Rockamine, they really helped me out a lot because I was going through a lot of stuff in my personal life. And so I did my time, took off the dime, and I went over and took up operations because old John Boy Forbes, he had made the 8 list, so he went and took over for me. And then, I finally decided, I was tired. I really didn't want to get looked at for sergeant major because even if I made it, so then that'd be another 3 to 5 years I'd have to do. And, there's certain things. So coming up, a lot of the senior leaders I had, they said pretty much the same thing with different wording, but there's going to come one day where you're going to wake up and there's not a promotion and there's not an assignment they can offer you or anything to where you'd be like, yeah, it's time to hang it up. And, I had that too, like I said, when Michael Brown was talking about, oh, I made sure I had a crease on my uniform in Afghanistan. And then there was another time where we were doing a PT test and I was the first sergeant. I was running the PT test and I got down to the halfway point, probably about between 7 8 minutes. And I turned around and I don't know, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, why am I killing myself? Because I really don't have anything else left to prove. Once you get past 20, you're not working for an NCOER anymore. You're there because you want to be there, not because you need to be there. And then I have soldiers coming straight out of AIT that are literally half my age that can't meet minimum standard. And here I am trying to give myself a coronary or whatever, exceeding the standard or whatever. And after that, my body had started telling me a few years ago it was time to slow down, and my mind just caught up with me.
Amen. Amen. I did much the same thing. It was like one day I was like, okay, that's enough. I went and told Sergeant Major, hey, look, I'm going to fill out my paperwork. I'll bring it in tomorrow. And he, of course, he tried to talk me out of whatever, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. When it's time to go, it's time to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, and people were like, well, do you miss it? And I'm like, I miss the camaraderie and everything. But honestly, outside of this and outside of one reunion that I go to every year, I don't really do the whole veteran thing that much just because there's some people that ruin it for everyone. And then there's some people that, as I would say, can't let that shit go. People are like, why do you act like you hate your time in the Army? I didn't hate my time in the Army. It's just the Army was a part of my life, but it's not my whole life. I mean, there's people that I know right now, they've been retired longer than they were in when they retired in the Army. And they're like, yeah, it's like another lifetime ago. And, people are like, well, why don't you do all this stuff? I'm like, dude, the only place I ask for a veteran discount is Lowe's, and that's because I'm there all the time. Other than that, I don't spotlight because it once again goes back to selfless service, not selfish service.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So what are you proud of from being your service? Is there something that you say, hey, I am proud of? Maybe it's not a thing. Maybe it's a time or Is there something that you can say, I'm really proud of this?
I'm proud. I mean, there's that question has a lot of depth. I'm proud that I was able to serve my country. I'm proud that I did something that I was good at, and I was proud that I was able to deploy and not lose anyone. And I mean, um, whether you influence someone good or bad, I mean, I talk about uh, the soldier that I mentioned earlier, Jason Abatua, last week graduated from the Sergeant Major Academy. Um, although I played a small part in his career, it's good to see him and other soldiers that I have or that I've had actually progress. I mean, there's some that are lieutenants and captains right now. I have one soldier who, when he was a private, was across from my desk, and I was jumping his shit because he got drunk and beat up one of his people in his platoon. He's like a sergeant, staff sergeant right now out there killing it. I mean, it's about what's the 50 Cent word, the sphere of influence that you have and how you affect people. I'm proud that I was able to make my parents proud. My father was actually there whenever I took over my first battery, so that was good. And I hope I was able. I may have been, or let's call a spade a spade. I may be somewhat shit in my personal life and relationships, but as far as my professional life, I hope I was able to provide my boys an example of how to achieve success when you apply yourself.
Amen. Amen. I think that, you definitely got a big crowd here tonight, and a lot of folks love you, definitely. And that's really cool. As we begin to close out, I would love it if you would think about maybe calling your old unit to attention and signing out. If you seen, would you do that for me? You can do it seated, but and then I'll give you the final word, and you can close us out. What do you think?
Sure. It's been a while, so I don't have my drill sergeant voice, but I've had a couple in me, so I'll actually agree to this. But well, just call a battery to attention.
So yeah. Basically, you call the battery to attention and sign out. Now, and then it's over, and we'll call it. Or you can say the last word,
Yeah,
and then whatever.
I'll even stand up for this. It's been a while. Battery attention!
Oh, I love it. That's awesome, man. Isn't it so cool to do that, right? That is to have a group of soldiers standing out in front of you, you call them to attention. There's just something that gets that blood pumping, doesn't it?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I've had a great time hanging out with you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been wonderful here with First Sergeant Retired Christopher Hewitt on Heroes Live. Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, great. You want me to do my final word or whatever now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I deliberated on this, but I decided what I'm going to use is something that I always used to say, especially near the end of my career, so it'll take a minute or two. And plus, I actually have had people prodding me to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and appease the masses. So are you ready? I don't have to say a whole lot about the way that I feel about the nature boy Ric Flair. No respect, no honor. There's no honor from thieves in the first place. He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. Ric Flair, you don't know what hard times are. Hard times are when the textile workers are out of work, can't pay their wages, got 4 or 5 kids to feed and can't pay their bills. Hard times are when the auto workers are told to go home. And hard times is when a man has worked at a job for 30 years. 30 years, they give him a watch, kick him in the ass, and say, hey, a computer took your place, Daddy. That's hard times. That's hard times. And Ric Flair, you put hard times on this country by trying to take Dusty Rhodes out. Now, I admit I don't look like the athlete of the day is supposed to look. My belly's a little big. My hiney's a little wide. But, brother, I am bad, and these people know I'm bad. And there were 2 bad people in this world. One of them was dead, and that's John Wayne, brother, and the other one's right here. Ric Flair, the world's heavyweight championship belongs to these people. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to reach my hand out, and I want your hand to realize it's touching my hand as we live with the greatest assembly of humanity. And I promise you and everyone that I will be the next world's heavyweight champion on this Hard Times Blues Dusty Rhodes Tour 85. And that's the bottom line. The Stone Cold said so.
Young, old, all you lovers.
Woo! I love it, man. You are the man. I've had so much fun hanging out with First Start Retired Christopher Hewitt, everybody. Good night, man.
Freedom.